talking about safe space because we realized that that's a whole different paper altogether. So we're just focusing on emotional labor as part of this presentation.
So the idea for this paper began with a phone call I received from Anton, a young man from a disadvantaged community I work with in my capacity as an applied theatre facilitator. He told me about how the session I ran earlier upset him and made him reflect on his strained relationship with his family. I was surprised because I hadn't picked up on any emotional clues earlier. I felt guilty that I made him feel that way.
So Izzaty's experience offers a glimpse into the kind of emotion work of both applied theatre facilitators and participants. In her brief opening, Izzaty reflected on how she had failed to be attentive to the sensitivities in the room, inadvertently affecting one of her participants. And this realization evoked a sense of self-blame, which is a common emotional challenge encountered by applied theatre facilitators. Through her participant Anton's reaction, it also reveals how participants themselves can experience a conflict between what is felt and what is shown. And from this, we wanted to consider more closely how the concept of emotional labor operates in an applied theatre context and its effect on both facilitators and participants.
This paper considers the work of the Community Theatre,
or what we refer to as the TCT project,
a drama-based group in Singapore led by me. TCT is a youth development program initiated by a voluntary welfare organization. It enlists youth volunteers from a mix of low and middle-high socioeconomic status to co-create shows that engage audiences to reflect on the social challenges faced by children and families from low socioeconomic backgrounds. These performances tours various rental flat communities, creating opportunities for participants to contribute to their own community despite their challenging circumstances. The performances also encourage community members to take responsibility for addressing the social issues affecting them.
So for this paper, we first looked briefly at key ideas related to emotional work and emotional labor, and we're focusing on professional contexts where caring relationships are essential. So in order to understand how these impact both the facilitator and participants, we're going to draw on two examples that emerge in TCT's work. And so in sharing these experiences, we begin to articulate the need for a critical emotional praxis that serves to deal with what we have termed the tyranny of emotional distance, which we're using to refer to the negative effects caused by having to constantly manage emotions.
So for this presentation, we're not going to delve too much into the informing literature, but want to briefly touch on key ideas to help frame our understanding of the work. Essentially, Sheila Preston's article on the emotional labor of the applied theatre facilitator served as our starting point, drawing on Arlie Hochschild's pioneering work into the concept. Emotional labor is defined as a public display of and use of emotion in the service of work which requires one to induce or suppress feeling in order to sustain the outward continence that produces the proper state of mind in others.
Hochschild also uses the term emotion management to describe how individuals control and manage their emotions to make sure that they're expressed in a way that's consistent with social norms or expectations. And this emotion management becomes emotional labor when emotions become processed, standardized, and subject to hierarchical control.
We'd like to quickly highlight the distinction between emotional work and emotional labor. Emotional work describes efforts made to understand others, to have empathy with their situation. It also refers to the intention and action to improve how others feel.
So in general, sometimes emotional labor can be another term used to refer to emotional work. However, specifically emotional labor is Hochschild's term, which is influenced by Marxist thought, and emotions are an essential commodity to be sold in the workplace.
In caring contexts, such as teaching for instance, there is a focus on receptivity, relatedness, and responsiveness. These caring relationships are generally unequal, where one person usually has almost exclusive responsibility as carer. Teachers perform emotional labor when they underplay, overplay, neutralize, or change their emotions according to the feeling rules of the setting.
And feeling rules basically dictate how one should feel, and perhaps more importantly, appear to feel in the professional and cultural setting.
So when the applied theatre facilitators like me are engaged in caring relationship with participants, they need to create a sense that participants are being cared for in a convivial and safe space.
So when we looked at the literature on emotional labor, it generally focuses on the experiences of workers and the providers of care. And so we were wondering whether or not emotional labor affects participants at all, or the recipients, and if so, in what ways, and how does emotional labor manifest in the experience of the receivers or the participants. But before we go on to explore that, we actually acknowledge that the emotional cost of managing one's feelings as a participant will differ from that of the facilitator, because they're not bound in the same way by these market-led agendas. But nonetheless, participants, and such as those from the community theatre, from TCT, they create work as a form of service to their communities. And likewise, they can be impacted by the wider organizational structures. And the implications of participants managing their emotions can actually offer some insight into the need for applied theatre facilitators to create opportunities where suppressed feelings experienced by both the facilitator and the participants can be critically engaged with.
So from our interviews and workshop reflections, two interesting discoveries emerged. The first one is we were devising a scene about a young child who kept refusing to go to school since his mother's death. I wanted the group to explore potential reasons that would increase the protagonist's refusal to go to school and ask them to adopt a role and speak lines that would intensify the protagonist's oppression. I tried getting them to create a soundscape made out of those oppressive statements, but they just kept giggling, and I just felt the group wasn't emotionally connected with the scene. But I had a gut feeling that some of them might have incarcerated adults in their life, and was curious to know if they had absent parents. On the spur of the moment, I asked them if they knew anyone who had been or was in jail, and more than half the participants in the rooms put their hands up.
And so when Izzaty and I were talking about this encounter, she shared with me that she felt overwhelmed, as if she had opened up a can of worms, and those were the words that she used to describe the situation. But rather than displaying these feelings, she kept an exterior of being in control because she needed to promptly address the situation. She acknowledges that one of the rules in her line of work is the need to be empathetic, but felt in that situation that she just didn't know how to empathize and actually couldn't bring herself to fake the emotion. So instead, she asked Dre, a 19-year-old participant, to take over the facilitation of the workshop. She believed that Dre would be better able to facilitate the group, as Dre was emotionally close to the issue of having incarcerated parents. Dre then spoke kindly to the group about her own personal story and ended it off with strong words of encouragement, especially to the younger children.
So in an interview with Dre later, she revealed that she had very angry feelings when she saw how many of the younger children in the group had parents who had been or were in jail. This is what she said: "These kids, they don't deserve this. They deserve so much better. Parents who give them whatever they need, and they don't have to worry about how much pocket money they have or how they live their daily life. I feel it's unfair. Why do we have to go through this? Why do they have to go through this? Like their parents had a choice whether or not to do the crime, and they choose to do it. You know you have children, and now your children are here with us sharing this, and then you are serving your sentence because of your own stupidity." So this is exactly what she said. Yeah.
And when asked in an interview why she felt she had to suppress her anger during the workshop, she told me that I kept it in and was just questioning why these people have to make the lives of their children, their wives, so difficult. She kept it in because she didn't want to hear things. She didn't want to hear people saying to her stuff like, "You should be more forgiving, you should be more understanding about her father in jail." But she just kept saying it's unfair, and she kept going back to the kids. The kids, they know that her parents in jail, but they don't have any answers. And why do they have to question such thing? And she kept stressing that it was not fair.
So instead of voicing these feelings to the group, she redirected her inner thoughts as outward words of wisdom to the participant. She told them to not blame the parents and told them that if you know this is not the life that you want your future kids to have, then study hard. People always say it will get better, but I know it won't. Prove everyone wrong. Stay in school, make the right choice in life.
So we read this as Dre having to engage in emotional labor to manage her deep-seated feelings of injustice. Her own personal experience allowed her to empathize with the younger children, but she felt that she couldn't outwardly express her anger for fear of having her negative emotions trivialized. And there was also a sense that if there was an outburst of anger, it would disrupt the feelings of safety for the younger children in the room. And her strategy for navigating these strong feelings was to help the children feel that there is a light at the end of the road, that those were her words, there's a light at the end of the road. And she was in a position where she took on the responsibility to providing a caring relationship for the group.
So encounter number 2. This second example arose during a recent collaboration between TCT and a group of students from a post-secondary educational institution. The aims of this collaboration were to engage the young people from both groups to create social awareness about rental flat communities through an interactive performance. In addition, it sought to educate the partnering group on how theatre could be used for social action and not just entertainment. Preston explains that for applied theatre facilitators, market-led agendas can come into conflict with one's personal moral objective. During this collaboration, I encountered numerous tensions. For instance, the teacher from the partnering group wanted to cut the interactive part of the performance. She thought it would be a waste of the time for the audience, which included the management, the directors of the educational institution. Plus, any feedback the teacher provided to the young people came across quite disparaging. It seemed that the teacher was demonstrating false individual ownership of the project, which was about protecting her reputation. These attitudes come in direct conflict with the core values of TCT, which seek to engage audiences in active reflection as well as supporting community spirit and ownership.
And so we also see how participants can experience similar struggles, especially when they too have a strong moral obligation to the work. When we interviewed Anton, he shared this. He said the majority of the partnering group, the students from the educational institution that he was collaborating with, weren't doing it for the community. I had the urge to tell them, this isn't working out because you guys are thinking a different way. You're not putting your heart and soul into the show. But I controlled myself. During one of the sessions, Izzaty saw this young man, Anton, just calmly walking out the room when the teacher was talking to the group. And we actually learned later that Anton had to excuse himself because actually he was fuming on the inside. And so this is an interview between Anton and myself. He said, even though I felt triggered, I just kept quiet. She just kept talking to us like the play belonged to her. Obviously not. I felt like I was a student. She kept talking about her own image, like, is this the play I want? If people talk about this play, I'll feel so embarrassed. And I was just like, if I had the guts to rage, I would have said, shut the F up and go away. And so I asked him, so what happened when you walked off? Did you just calm down? And he said, yeah, I just calmed down. I didn't say anything. It's so unnecessary. It's not important in all this being a good actor. As long as you have the message, people will understand. The teacher and some of those students didn't care about the community.
Anton was emotionally invested in the work. He felt responsible for creating a show that would serve the members of his community. He was also conscious of possible undesirable consequences if he did not manage his emotions. He said that I didn't want to spoil anything. I didn't want to disappoint Izzaty, make her look bad, and I didn't want people to be affected by my reaction.
So he was actually conscious of how if he were to rage out, it would affect the relationship that Izzaty would have with the partnering organization. But another insightful discovery was made when Anton, the young man, and Izzaty started to discuss their experiences, so facilitator and participant. I'm going to read Anton's bit and Izzaty will read her part of the conversation. Anton said, I was so surprised that you felt the same way. I was so scared to tell you because I thought you were so on with them. that you were so excited to work with them. I thought you were so happy all the time to work with them. I thought in your mind you were thinking, they're really doing a good job. I love them so much.
And I said to him, I felt the same way. It was very draining for the wrong reasons. It was draining. But I don't know. Sometimes I find myself not wanting to influence you guys to feel how I feel about this. I want you guys to have your own thoughts. I think that's why I didn't show you how I felt, because I was trying to be fair. But I couldn't tahan, which is called, I can't deal with it anymore. Yeah.
So this confession highlights how emotional labor of the facilitator can affect the participants, who start to read the facilitator's displayed emotions as a cue for how they should perform their own emotions. So as a result, participants can engage in their own forms of emotional labor, potentially causing them to struggle with having to manage their real feelings.
So in conclusion, applied theatre facilitators providing caring relationships engage in emotional labor, but their emotional resources can become strained when their personal commitment comes into conflict with marketized expectations of the workplace, such as having to prove results.
But we argue that it's just as important to see how emotional labor and emotional management affects participants. This is especially relevant in contexts informed by social justice, where participants have high emotional investment in creating awareness about social inequalities and are acting as agents of change. In both the encounters examined today, the applied theatre facilitator and the participants can be said to have undergone parallel journeys of emotional labor, even though the types of emotions being regulated and the reasons for regulating them might have differed.
We suggest that a space needs to be created where both facilitators and participants can engage in critical emotional praxis. This is where emotional resistance to unjust systems and practices informs and supports socially just work. In Dre's experience, it will mean that unsavory emotions such as anger need not always be distant in order to maintain the notion of safety. Rather, it will entail a careful and critical unpacking of comfort zones to deconstruct the ways in which we have learned to see, feel, and act.
Critical emotional praxis can also be useful to examine and hopefully resist the power relations exerted on the moral and political objectives of facilitators and participants who create work for disadvantaged communities. Through our discoveries, we've learned that facilitators don't need to engage in emotional labor as a solitary journey, and that a community of coping can be created with participants who share the same motivations, and thus finding an associational solidarity within this labor process.
It's crucial, however, that this approach doesn't become an opportunity to simply vent these emotions. Rather, a shared emotional understanding of the importance of the work can strengthen relationship between facilitators and participants and sustain them in their fight for the betterment of society. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. We've got a good 10 minutes for questions. I was so engaged I forgot to give you a... Very good. So yeah, any questions?
I have like about 50, but I'm going to try it. That was just amazing, and I just think there's so much rich food for more research in there as well, including all the wonderful insights that you're pulling out. So I guess my first question relates to one of the last points you made, because I can't even get back to some of the other stuff I wrote down. And it's about that engaging with the participants, and a bit like Marianne said, being with them, walk with me or be with me, and building that community of coping with them. I guess we all understand that facilitators can never really be neutral or objective or external to the process that they're in, and you've acknowledged that really nicely, but you're also saying that the facilitators feel this compulsion to control themselves. So I guess I'm really interested in how you prepare participants, or how would you recommend that practitioners prepare participants for that experience of coping emotionally, that critical emotional praxis, if that's something that they're going to go through and you're going to try and guide them through that process, how would you communicate that at the outset of a program or a workshop to say that we're going to go on this journey together, and it's going to be tricky, or we're going to go through emotional labour, or however. Is there something that you can offer to other practitioners?
Do you want to?
I guess when how do I say this? One of the crucial factors was a very engaged and long-term relationship with them. So Anton and Dre were youth participants that I've worked more than 2 to 3 years already. So they've gone through a few years of the community theatre process. And through that, actually, during each time is revealing the facilitators' personal worries and personal struggles in their own personal lives. So I've also opened up myself even more when I feel they are ready to hear more of the things, or they're the one asking me the questions like, are you always like this, Izzaty? Are you always so positive? Are you always... Then that's where I realized, okay, maybe they want to see another side of me, so that this relationship is a bit more genuine or authentic towards them. Yeah. And another thing is, I think, acknowledge. So recently, actually, we have a lot of emotional practice in our work this year, and I think I noticed that they are caring so much for the younger ones. The seniors in the group are caring so much for the younger one, to the point they told me, Izzaty, are they really ready to talk about all this serious issue? Is it too much for them?
And
You
how
see?
old are, like, they're
The
16 to like 19, right? They're not even that old.
Yeah, and these are youth who are from 16 to 19 years old, and there are also younger participants between the age of 12 to 15 years old, you see, and these are new participants, so this is their first time here. So they themselves are becoming a bit like me, where they're thinking like, oh no, it's too much, it's too deep for them. So they're engaging in this emotional thing, but that's where I have to, I guess, ask them, what's their role? Where do they see themselves in this space? Why are they worried about the topics that we're sharing also, and allowing them to be honest within our own small group and acknowledging that issues that they are facing inside. So it's very important to provide that space for them to share, but not be with the new ones, but within the senior ones.
So they call it the core group.
Yeah, the core group. Yeah.
So I guess maybe for a facilitator who does not know the participants very well, that might be a bit more complex an issue.
So I have to build relationship with the new ones also, but then I realized that it's not as sustainable for me to know everyone in depth, but for them to know the new ones more in depth. So they themselves are doing the co-facilitating and co-emotional labor that we've mentioned inside. I hope that answers a bit of it.
Another question?
Yeah, no one else has one. I'm interested to know how your emotional practice, it has strategies for dealing with people with directly conflicting sets of emotions that they're having to labour to control. I'm thinking, for instance, if Dre found herself working with somebody who's equally angry on behalf of the parents who are in jail, that they've been put and see them as victims, and maybe as a friend or relative as one. And the cause of her anger is in fact the judgmentalism of someone like Dre, who is condemning something, and so the children get kind of forgotten between the two. It's hypothetical, but these kind of things do happen. Are there strategies that can help somebody deal with people in conflicting emotions?
There was one participant that we didn't mention, but he actually shared that he didn't understand why Dre was so angry, and why she didn't want to forgive her father, or why she didn't know how to deal with her father, because he himself has a father in jail. But I think it comes down again to personality, and he decided not to say anything, because when we asked him, why didn't you why didn't you raise this as a discussion point? He said, oh, that's her family, I don't want to add to the drama. So I think it might be cultural as well, as in if that's someone else's family, you don't touch that subject, in a sense.
So he was using his cultural background
I think that's what we're
to do emotional labour. I mean,
Yeah.
it was sounded like very hard emotional labour he was
Yeah.
doing.
Because he didn't want, because he saw how angry she was about it, how angry she was
Or how
about
emotionally
Yeah.
affected she was.
Yeah, and so he didn't want to raise that he didn't agree with her, because he saw that it's still his father, and his father's in jail, and he doesn't blame his dad, whereas Dre blames her father in a way, but he didn't say anything because he said that's between her and her father, I'm not going to get involved. So is that sort of, I think it comes down again to the personality, but
Yeah. Yeah, strategy-wise, I think we're still exploring. Yeah, I think as each year comes by, and the senior participants, and I think the new ones are also feeling it the way, is the sense of responsibility and passion that they want to do through the project. And when this passion and responsibility comes in, there's more emotional labor for them to want this to work. Yeah, and I think that's why recently we are having a bit more very, very honest conversation of how they feel being in the group and how people are affecting each other also. Yeah. So we've created that small space, and even we asked them to rate how safe they feel in the space. Yeah, and some of them are not all this, some of them are like this also, and we need to acknowledge that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Natalie.
Thank you.